Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we'll be talking about a potential snowstorm slash a cold blast of air and kind of wintry pattern as you head into the final week of October. Right now we're not heading into the final week of October, but this will be occurring into next week potentially. There is still a lot of disagreement between the models on this. However, I've been tempted to make a video about this a little earlier, already a few days ago, except this thing kind of has been going back and forth. One day, the GFS started showing it, showed it for around 3 to 4 days, and then it stopped for maybe like 2 or 3 days, and now it started showing it again, and we're getting closer and closer in time, and it seems as if the initial GFS model from I think it was 6 or 7 days ago when it started showing it was correct. It just had a brief and temporary kind of I guess derp moment, and it's now re-showing the system again along with this cool blast of air. Now the Climate Prediction Center in their 3 to 4 week outlook has been kind of indicating that there could be some sort of a cooler air mass around the late October into early November timeframe, already way back into early October. So this isn't anything too new, but I don't know if anyone really has talked about it. But I'm sure people that have been watching the weather models have been noticing that there is going to be some activity across the northwestern United States, and this could result in either a big mountain snowstorm or even a plains snowstorm, depending on which model run you look at. So yesterday, just to show you, yesterday was still a day where the GFS, for example, kept all this activity well towards the north. You can see Friday, October 27th, no big systems, obviously towards the north, the Canadian prairies, and into the kind of the, I guess, the Ontario and Quebec plates there. There is a storm, but too far north really for our viewing area to be concerned about this. And the viewing area mainly is the United States and southern Canada, but up here very few people do live. I don't know if I even have any viewers from this far north into Quebec and Ontario. And do note that it just showed, yeah, storms that were riding way further north. However, this abruptly changed, started showing a system a bit later on. So the first few do go towards the north. So that's that, but then they have a big one across the plains that takes place, and boom, it explodes and drops some snow. Now, I kind of figured this would be a outlier, so I didn't really get too excited by this. However, in the morning, you could see that it continues showing this pattern. But now, the first snowstorms that were initially going to go way into southern Canada are now forecast to go pretty far south, enough to affect the United States and southern Canada. So let's go through this and start with the GFS 6.0 model. It's from today in the morning. So notice that we don't have that much activity going on now. In the next few days, there will be a system that traverses across the Midwest, combines with some eastern moisture, moisture off the eastern seaboard, and this does create a pretty nasty storm for the eastern United States. However, no real big impacts in terms of snow, excluding for maybe you can see pretty far north there into Quebec, and this thing moves out of there pretty quickly. And to be honest, I'm kind of sick of reporting on rainstorms. I kind of want to get some snow, so that's why I'm not making a video about that one in particular. But do note that by Tuesday of next week, so around a week from right now, we do start seeing a strong system starting to develop, almost like a Colorado low, with a lot of moisture here, a lot of snow potentially into Montana, northern Wyoming. This thing does end up going further north, but it does deliver some impacts in the form of snow across the northwest. We see another rather large system across California that could be a first big one for the Sierra Nevadas, deliver more snow for Montana, Idaho, Nevada, even into Utah, you can see right there. And we have this cold trough of air right there that is going to be pushing a cold front down, which gives way to potentially another system developing into the central United States there, into around the Halloween time frame. So that is that. If we click on a new one, so this is the second to most recent model run, you can see that there's that first week of weather, right? Again, there's that northeast system. They've been consistent with that, and nothing's going to change with according to that. But we do see, again, that a moisture surge from the northwest, a little trough developing from the north, and moisture from this tropical storm here across the south. Tropical storm. It's going to be landfalling as a pretty strong hurricane in Mexico, around 200 hours out. And you can see that this one moves out of the way, but this one, the new model one, really popped off and started showing a lot of snow, and that includes for many southern areas into the United States, and as well as large cities like even Winnipeg there, Calgary, maybe Saskatoon, seeing some snow. Pretty rainy here across Brandon and areas as into the southern kind of Manitoba area, but further east into Saskatchewan and further west into Saskatchewan and Alberta, that would be a massive system. But that's not done. You can see we have very cold air mass across the northwest, so this gives way to potentially another system forming with a lot of rain, sleet, snow. So this would be again something to watch for. out ahead of this really cold air mass into early November. Now, again, don't get too excited because the most recent model run, it didn't go back on all of that, but it definitely did change. And you can see that the GFS still shows consistently this first system across the Northeast. A lot of snow, or sorry, a lot of rain with that. Maybe some snow showers across Maine and northern New Hampshire and a wraparound of this thing. Nothing too significant. But what we do see consistently is this first system moving in early next week. So really Sunday, Monday time frame across the Northwest. We see this hurricane making landfall across Mexico. This gives a massive moisture surge to this system. And you can see that this first one kind of fails to develop, right? We have a really strong high pressure here. I mean, a really strong one. We have a strong low pressure. So we're just going to be seeing extremely strong southerly winds giving way to a really, really strong air anomaly, meaning very warm temperatures. Going back, you can see this kind of makes this storm speed off unreasonably quickly. So it doesn't really, I guess, formulate with this trough or kind of system moving in with that trough. If these two do kind of end up colliding a bit more, that could create a much larger system. Again, anything could happen. This is still very, very far out to 198 hours. And do note that this thing is still, according to the latest GFS model run, dumps a ton of snow across Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, into Colorado. And it does still end up some snow across the Dakotas. But again, you can see it's kind of like a bit more of a messy forecast. And you can see later on into the 300-hour plus time frame, the GFS doesn't really show any cool or predominantly cool air masses. It kind of takes them off towards the east. So that is interesting, a lot of jumping around. But what makes me more confident in the fact that there will be a cooler air mass than what the GFS shows, because that's a little hit or miss going just off of that thing. If you take a look at the 2-meter temperature anomalies of the GEFS, so this is an ensemble. This isn't just one model. It's an ensemble. It's many, many models combined, and you can see that if we take them out for near future, it's going to be warming up for much of the United States and even across the north and west where that cold air will potentially be into late October. You can see potentially some cool air with that big system that develops across the Northeast. Obviously cloud cover, and this thing will just be so big that it pulls in cool air on its own. But on the 24th, 25th, you can see we do start seeing some cool air pulling across the north and west, and this is pretty significant. I mean, it's a pretty strong anomaly, and you can see it works its way pretty far south into the United States. This only goes out to 336 hours, but you can see that it's pretty much affecting a good portion of the United States around Halloween time. If we go back to the previous model run at noon, you can see it also showed that cool air mass, and it stuck it around through early November, maybe even longer. We'll have to wait and see. So they've been consistent with this, the GEFS. So it's not surprising to see one model being all over the place versus the ensembles being more in line, because, well, I think the total members include 34. So it averages out things a lot more, and pretty much what they're telling you is that there's a lot bigger theme for cool air. Maybe not, this cold, but cold enough where it will be a very cold blast, bringing frost and freezes to many, many new areas. Now, you may be wondering, what does the European have to say? Well, the European by itself only goes out to 240 hours. Let me go on Pivotal Weather and show you this. So there's that calm period of weather, right, at that little upper level low that turns into a bigger system across the Northeast. They have the GFS and European more or less agree on that. Again, I'm not too excited about that regardless. I am looking more towards the north and west. So we do see this pretty large system make its way onto the northwest of the United States. Notice a big difference is that the European doesn't necessarily show a hurricane here across Mexico, so we don't really see as much moisture transport. We still see a very strong high pressure giving way to very strong southerly winds, but we do see a low pressure develop, and you can see that right there. If you recall, I believe the GFS took this first one and really swept it out of here really quickly. So the European takes it around quite a bit more slowly, and then it does still have a pretty nasty storm across the northwest. So a lot of activity, but it doesn't necessarily agree with the GFS 100% with that activity. However, we can look at the European ensembles, which are right here, the EPS, and you can see we could see similarly with what the GFS, right? What are they showing overall, not just one model, the operational one. And I think the members for the EPS is even more significant. It's like 50 compared to the 36 that the GFS family has. So notice it does show a warm up right out ahead of this big system. We have the strong barocclinic zone, basically where two air masses meet. We often see big storms forming between these air masses. It's almost always a given. And you can see that the European, just like the GFS, shows that cool air mass now late October developing and works its way into the central and northern and even eastern United States as well. Now, so again, there's a pretty good agreement with these two models that these two ensemble groups that usually don't necessarily agree this far out. So this is pretty. This gives me a lot of confidence, a lot more than it normally would be just by looking at the GFS and European individually. And again, where will we see a system, a big storm? We don't know. Will there be one? Most likely, with such a strong contrast in air masses. You can see we initially see a large heating of temperatures across the west. This moves east, and we see a large cooling, and we always see along this Barrett Clinic zone big storms. And you can see they've been showing this for several days now. 15, 14, I could go back probably like 3 to 4 days, and it will still be showing consistently that. The Climate Prediction Center, despite them showing 3 to 4 weeks out, a few weeks ago, I think in a previous one, not this last Friday, but 2 weeks ago on Friday, they showed cool air across the northwest. Now, they seem to have backed off. I do agree with this. It will be warm out ahead of the system, but, you know, if I were to really do this forecast, 8 to 14 day outlook, I would show a lot more cold working its way into the west and the northern United States. I believe that their forecast here is sticking around a lot too much of this warm air here. Regardless, though, they are pretty much, you can see, showing below, above, and between this, we usually see some sort of big system, especially where you can see they're definitely showing a lot of activity. 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook above for a huge section of the country. The 6 to 10 day outlook, I don't believe is, well, never mind, it is just as incredible. So that's the thing. When you see above average precipitation, especially overlining with cold and warm air masses, you will see a snowstorm somewhere. I'm very confident about that, and this will probably be the first significant one of the season. Whether or not this, or where does this occur, we don't know. I can't give you that answer, but you saw some of the scenarios that the GFS put out, right, with those Midwest, kind of upper plains systems, maybe southern Canadian prairies get hammered more. Maybe it's more of a northwest and kind of western mountainous system, and then just kind of peters out. This is a CFS model, so this one, I don't really like it for any accuracy, but sometimes I do like to look at it, what it shows in the long range, right? So this one goes out to 800 hours. It's pretty garbage short term. It shows a lot of these systems. You can see it shows activity here, increased activity, but what it does with these systems is usually not really too noteworthy. But you can see anything past 400, 500, 600 hours out, we don't really see that many models reading that far out. So whatever it does show is kind of interesting to see, and you can see that it does show a continued flow of kind of these northwest cold air masses and warm air masses towards the east. So, you know, that would potentially give way to quite a bit of big systems across the plains maybe. And it does introduce some periods of cool air across the northeast and kind of northern United States. So it's definitely interesting what they're showing here. Definitely a lot of activity as we go into early November. Definitely no shortage of it. I wouldn't say this is anything too calm. And we could take a look at the temperature anomaly, give us a better reading of what it shows. And generally, you'll see that aside from the short term where it shows a lot of warmth across the west, it's generally going to be keeping, at least from that 200-hour period to say 500 hours out, a lot of the warmth towards the central United States, and if any cool weather, it would be across, you could see, the northwest there. Some of these anomalies will probably be very strong. I mean, we see some of these big systems, and if we do have a really strong high pressure setup with the strong low pressure, we could see some really strong, warm moisture flows towards the United States, central United States. So that's going to be pretty interesting. So yeah, a lot of activity and a lot of things to watch. And I just kind of wanted to give you an update on that because, well, I haven't made a video in a while, and I wanted to show you that. Another group of ensembles, a GEPS. This one isn't as necessarily good. I don't like it as much, but it's still one that I look at. So let's start off by looking at the short term. Again, that's a short term, cool for now across the eastern United States, but we do quickly see this warming coming from the west, and then it moves into the central United States. It does stay a bit cool across the east with that nor'easter that we will see, that system this upcoming weekend. But then look, we do see that cold air and warm air mass according to the GEPS, which is consistent with the other two ensemble groups, which again is why I have such confidence in this, that this will rather be a pretty good scenario for a system. And you can see that precipitation anomaly does show an increase of precipitation across the central United States, as opposed to a drier pattern now, which you can see right there, boom. A lot drier, it's going to increase into a wetter one. So that is definitely in line with the scenarios that the GFS and European model paint. I can show you the Canadian one as well. This one, again, just like the European, only goes out to 240 hours, so it doesn't give us the best read. However, you can see it does show a lot of things similarly. Right there's that northeast system, pretty calm and dry until then across the Midwest. No real model shows anything different than this. Unlike the European, the Canadian does show a tropical storm here, kind of making landfall into Mexico, so that'll definitely give moisture to these systems, which the Canadian does, and you can see it develops a pretty nasty storm, and another one right on the heels of that. So it's definitely interesting. We'll have to see, strong high pressure, strong low pressure. These things, when you have these around, it doesn't take long for a system to really rapidly develop and explode into one, and we've seen that especially around this time frame, which is fall. So I'll keep you guys updated. In fact, I actually want to show you the model run of the European from midnight, and show you its scenario, what it showed. I only showed you the one from noon. So again, there's that nor'easter. It actually showed a pretty strong one. It has since kind of backed off on that. So again, there's still not all certainties with this. This thing could be, I mean, if this were the case, this would be a lot more of an impactful storm, and it would drop a lot of rain and water for this upcoming weekend across the Northeast. But you can see the European from midnight model run did show that system right there. There's that high pressure. Did show more moisture than it shows now from kind of that tropics across Mexico there. So that's interesting. And you can see that it shows, yeah, just a lot of activities. I mean, you can see this huge chunk of moisture here across Montana, big snow event, and then here across California. So a lot of activity as we head into the latter part of October. I'm been kind of rambling, going back and forth, but this is a little bit far out, so I don't have necessarily anything else to show you, anything too concise. I just kind of wanted to make sure that I showed you pretty much everything that I could, and as of now, I believe I have. So just stay prepared for a potentially a lot more storminess across, especially if you live across the western United States. That includes even the Southwest, the Midwest as well. There could be some big rain events with this, even big snow events if you live further north. And then if you live in a middle part and eastern part, well, obviously the eastern United States will be dealing with that system next weekend. But after that, it looks pretty warm and also very stormy, as a lot of these snowstorms will be riding from the southwest to the northeast. So that's definitely something to watch for. All right, guys, I'll catch you on the next episode. See ya. Bye.